Want to welcome in Tom Murphy to the program now here on the Morning Rush. Tom, we appreciate your time as always. 2020 is finally coming to an end. How excited are you to move on to 2021, man?
Yeah, pretty much so. 2019 wasn't a great year for the Murphy people either, but 2020 was a rough year for all of us. So I noticed in the Sunday cartoons that about 4 of the different cartoons were about wishing 2020 goodbye. And I know, well, things are going to turn in 2021. Things will get better from the pandemic standpoint and all that. But, you know, thankfully there's a lot of really good economic indicators out there. And, you know, I think employment will bounce back too. But that's another topic.
Let's start with the topic of the Arkansas basketball game last night, Tom. They get a win over the Auburn Tigers, undefeated so far this season, every single win by double digits. It was getting a little rocky when Justin Smith went down, and you didn't know how that was going to affect the team. Well, they persevered and overcame his injury. What do you think your biggest takeaway was from their win last night?
Oh, man, there's so many, and it's a pretty amazing feat they pulled off. The question I had last night, which impressed me so much, was every time Arkansas controlled the game, and every time Auburn would get on a 3-point spree and they'd come back and they'd tie it, and what was there of a crowd would really be into it. And so many times in games like that, when the home team catches up, it just seems like they get the momentum and they get over the top and they get you down. Well, the Razorbacks didn't allow that. It's clearly Arkansas more of a veteran team than Auburn, but I just thought their composure when Auburn made its runs and when they got streaky from 3 was my biggest takeaway. Was that they didn't start to crumble. They didn't let the crowd affect them, and they had some guys who, when you needed a bucket, particularly in the second half with Note driving to the rim, that they got it. And even on some missed shots, Connor Veno was there to clean up and dunked them back in. And they didn't shoot the 3-ball particularly well last night. So I just think it speaks to the overall strength when Tate was out with 4 fouls, Smith wasn't on the floor, Devontae Davis and some other guys came in and gave valuable minutes. The other team hit 15 3-pointers, and you still win the game. So much to commend the Razorbacks. You could tell how excited Eric Musselman was last night when he started his Zoom call. He was basically second, and then he did it at the very end as well. So huge road win to start the conference.
Yeah, for those who missed it, here's what he said last night.
Chuck, let's go, baby! Woo, pig!
Tom, you're exactly right. His excitement was echoing through the Zoom call and then on the radio here on ESPN Arkansas and hitthatline.com. And you think about this game last night, Tom, Hogs were favored. A lot of people didn't know that, but they were favored heading into that basketball team, and they really outdid expectations last night. Now, Eric Musselman wouldn't tell you that. He'd tell you that they have so much to work on, that they gave up too many threes. But for the Arkansas fan base to be looking at this team heading into a ranked game against Missouri, who got blown out last night by the Tennessee Volunteers, I mean, you have a great opportunity that lies ahead on Saturday when you take on the Tigers.
Yeah, I just thought this opening stretch for them, Auburn, Missouri, Tennessee, was going to be really tough. And when I saw the line come out on this game, I was a little surprised, but I just had not seen Auburn enough in preseason. So when you look at them, though, you see what their strengths are. They had a good 3-point shooting team. And I think Powell was going to – I think that was a little bit of an aberration for him. You could tell he plays with great confidence, but Arkansas did a good job of changing up Desi Sills, Jalen Tate, and Devontae Davis got some time on him as well. But really taking him out of his game a little bit. He didn't shoot with confidence. I think he was 1 of 6, and he had 7 turnovers. And Desi got a steal in the first minute and 10 seconds of the game that led to a layup in the 7-0 lead. So they did a good job there. I switched over, as you might have done as well, after the Arkansas game, and I got to watch a good bit of the second half of Missouri-Tennessee, and there was a stretch of about 3 minutes where I don't think anybody scored. Horrible shooting. Both teams went over 2 from the free throw line during the part I was watching, and it was just such a disjointed game as opposed to the really smooth flow of Arkansas-Auburn. It was a joy to watch that game, and then to watch the game in Como last night was very sluggish, to say the least.
And speaking of switching over to other games, we're talking with Tom Murphy here on the Morning Rush. Another game that I watched last night was the Florida-Oklahoma game in the Cotton Bowl, and that was a disaster for Dan Mullen's Florida Gators. Now, we have to throw in this tidbit. 4 of their top 5 passing catchers, including Kyle Pitts and Kadarius Toney, did not play last night. So you have to factor that in when Kyle Trask, when you look at his stat line and you see the 3 interceptions in the first quarter. Tom, did you get a chance to watch any of that last night and how Oklahoma thoroughly dominated the Gators?
Yeah, total piecemeal because it corresponded with the Arkansas game and then the post game when I was working. But I did flip over, and I couldn't tell exactly what was going on, but it was a romp. There's no doubt about that. And giving up 650 yards or whatever it was, you see a lot of chatter out there about Todd Grantham and whether he's going to survive the offseason. But the one thing the post game showed was that Dan Mullen was in the mood to make excuses, it sounded like, and he gave a lot. And I think the national media has fun when an SEC team gets beaten in a bowl game. I don't know if you saw the Brett McMurphy tweet from this morning, but it's something like, little known fact is that no SEC teams have never lost a bowl game that they didn't care about. And so, in other words, Florida with players out and all that, the excuses will be made. Look, they were not at full strength. There's no doubt about that, but you don't want to hear the coach really whining a lot. You know, you might just state it as a fact. Look, we were down our top receivers and some other guys, and as he said, they were below the coronavirus protocol numbers with total team roster. So you have to give them credit for going and playing the game. But, you know, hey, I would like to have seen what TCU would have offered in a game that would have been tonight. But that's not going to happen. And we saw the other side of it with Florida not having enough players and getting smoked.
Tom, you bring up TCU, their COVID stuff, and not having enough numbers to play in the game. I'm of the belief that if Arkansas was on the fringe or had under numbers, that game would still be played. Now, Tommy and I disagreed a little bit earlier this week, and I don't necessarily have a lot of validation to back that up. It's just my opinion, whether it's right or wrong. If Arkansas was in the situation that TCU found themselves in this week, do you think the Texas Bowl would have been played tonight?
Yeah, and by the way, happy birthday to Tommy.
It is his birthday, yes.
Yep. So pure speculation on whether or not they would have done it. But to me, it probably would have come down to the timing of it, maybe taking a poll of the rest of the players, because at that point you're like, hey, you're going to have to play extra snaps. Do you want to do this? You know, they did it against LSU. They were right down there on the number, and you saw the result. I mean, the defensive line was ravaged. They couldn't get pressure on the quarterback. Man, if you could have one do-over game with a full roster, you feel like they could have beaten LSU this year. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to say. My general thought is that they were a very willing team, and a lot of players would have said, "Yeah, let's go play the game." It's hard to speculate. And the thing with TCU, Gary Patterson strikes me as a guy who would have wanted to go play. But I don't know where their numbers were, what position groups or anything like that. Haven't done a deep dive on it. But you just have to take them for their word. And it's just one of those things in a year like this. 5 or 6 years ago, who could have ever imagined, like, hey, our team got struck by the flu. We're not going to go play our bowl game. Can you imagine how that would have sounded? And now it just seems, okay, well, you know, that could have happened. Yep, it did. So, you know, I'd like to have seen the bowl game, no doubt about it. I'd like to have seen how eager they were. And from all the guys we talked to on the Zooms, Bumper Pool and Jalen Catalon and some others, they were super eager. They took care of their business during the Christmas holidays and came back and tested well, and they were ready to go.
Yeah, and you mentioned 2 guys from Texas. I mean, Jalen Catalon from Manville. You had Bumper Pool from, I think, Frisco Liberty, if I remember that. Mike Woods, Magnolia, Traylon Smith kind of in that area. I mean, they want to go home. They want to show out in front of their families. So I understand that reasoning. Tom Murphy with us here on the Morning Rush. Tom, 2 more questions before we let you go. Big news, big shakeup in the college football playoff. Clemson offensive coordinator Tony Elliott will not be able to coach in the game against Ohio State on Friday because of COVID-19 protocols. In your opinion, does that change your belief on the Ohio State Clemson game this Friday?
It's an advantage for Ohio State that they don't have their play caller. Now, you'd like to think that during the course of this season, that Clemson would have had these contingency plans. All right, if Tony Elliott's not available, this is going to happen. And so the next guy up would understand his play calling duties and get the feel for how Tony Elliott likes to call a game. So the top teams had those things prepared this season. Arkansas had preparation plans. If Barry Odom has to take over, then he will take over. He did that at Florida. So even though it's a minor edge to Ohio State, I think Clemson will be okay, and I also think they're going to win the game.
Tom, before we let you go, we always like to talk about resolutions as we wind down any year. Do you have a 2021 resolution that you actually think you're going to be able to follow through on?
I've not been a big resolution guy, but each year, this time of year, when you come off that November, that Thanksgiving, Christmas doubleheader with a lot of pecan pie slices, it's about losing weight. So believe it or not, I'm going to try to lose weight.
Okay. My dad, you know what you should do what my dad's doing? No dairy. He's lost, I think he said 12 pounds. I don't know if you can avoid dairy, but he's been doing that, and it's helped him. So that would be the path I would take. Well, Tom, we always appreciate your time on Monday and Thursdays at 7:20. We appreciate you being part. I know you've been part of the Morning Rush before I got here for quite some time, and have a blessed 2021. And hopefully, it's better for the Murphy clan than 2019 and 2020 was, bud.
Yeah, Ty, I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Hey, we'll talk to you early Monday next year, man. Sounds great.